It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
When I was a university lecturer, we used to do this thing called office hours, consultation hours. There was a sign on the door. It said, if you want to see me, you can see me between this hour and this hour. This is when I can answer questions about lecturing and workshops and tutorials and assignments and essays. I kind of feel like every Tuesday it's become office hours. It's consultation hours. This is your chance to ask the expert. Kylie and I have got, I think we added up the other week, like 103, 104. Well, the kids are about to get older. We've got
Does grandparent hours add up? Because I reckon there's a whole heap more in there.
We've got 105 years of cumulative parenting experience. When you look at the ages of all of our kids, add them all up. That's what we're doing today. We're sharing our ideas that can help you to make your family happier. Kylie, we received an email, podcasts@happyfamilies.com.au. This one comes from Lauren.
I've just come across your fabulous podcast and love listening.
I'm just going to interrupt you right there. I love it when people say that they love our podcast. I just love that. Thank you, Lauren. Glad that you like listening.
It's always great to have a new listener. My eldest is 8 and she is always monitoring if everything is fair, from food to how much we play to choosing a game or TV show to watch. We have tried to explain that sometimes things are not fair and that's okay, but she has a very strong sense that things are unfair for her. I was wondering if there is a better approach than what I am doing, which is explaining that not everything's fair. And often I have to do things like clean up or do things that I don't feel is fair either. Any help would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. Really appreciate how much you love your kids. And it comes across in the way that you've shared that email with us. Podcasts@happyfamilies.com.au. Look, we need to dive into the developmental playbook here, Kylie, for a couple of key ideas on this question.
Before you do that, can I share a little analogy I saw the other day?
Just about to get on a roll, but go for it. Let's hear it.
I watched this teacher give a beautiful explanation to her little preppy class about fairness. And so she asked everybody, she had a box of Band-Aids, and she asked everybody to put up their hand if they'd ever hurt their elbow. And so a few kids put their hands up. So she said to one of the kids, come up here and I'll give you a Band-Aid for your elbow. So she puts a Band-Aid on his elbow and makes him feel all better. And he sits down and she says, has anybody ever hurt their knee? And a few kids put their hands up and she says, come up here, Freddie, let me give you a Band-Aid for your elbow. And a few of the kids start to kind of look at her and go, but hang on a sec. But she keeps going with the analogy. So she puts a Band-Aid on his elbow and makes him sit down. She said, has anyone ever had a sore tummy before? And a few kids put their hands up and she says, come up here and I'll give you a Band-Aid for your elbow. And by this stage, the kids are looking at like she's gone mad. They're like, but he doesn't need a Band-Aid for his elbow. He needs one for his tummy. And so then she's able to explain to them, but if everything needed to be fair, I gave Johnny a Band-Aid for his elbow.
So everybody has to have a Band-Aid for the elbow.
Everybody has to have a Band-Aid. That's the fair thing. She said, but it's not always fair because you didn't hurt your elbow, you hurt your knee or you have a sore tummy and it requires a different way to fix it, a different means. And so sometimes it looks like Johnny's getting something better or something different to you, and he is because that's what he needs. So I just loved that analogy and it was so visual for these little kids as they were sitting there going, oh, that makes sense. I don't need an elbow Band-Aid. I need one for my knee.
Yeah. So this ties in not very well at all with what I was going to say about moral development and formal operation thinking and concrete operational thinking and Piaget and Swiss psychology and blah, blah, blah. But I think that we can actually pull this together reasonably okay in spite of it. I want to get into the nitty-gritty of moral development and cognitive development for just a sec.
I just keep things light.
Yeah, you're basically sharing a Facebook meme with me, aren't you?
Sure.
Just straight off Facebook. Okay, let's bring this together. Picture your daughter's brain as a construction site. And that's what all brains are. They're literally being developed through what's happening, our experiences, creating perceptions and ideas. But at the age of 8, we've got a reasonably solid foundation to build on. And now we're laying the foundation for more complex thinking skills that are going to land in a few years' time, somewhere around 12, 13, 14. Right now, though, Lauren, your daughter is in what we call concrete operational thinking mode.
Everything's really black and white.
Black and white, yeah. And she's trying to move to more advanced reasoning, but concrete operational thinking is literally the cornerstone of the mental edifice that she's going to construct in years to come. She's great with rules. She likes what's tangible, what can be directly observed. Like logic rules.
It's so much easier to follow the rules when they're logical.
Correct. And this is what makes the concept of fairness fuzzy. Because with you as an adult, you've got this thing called formal operational thinking. What that means is that you're aware of context, you're aware of all the stuff that, I mean, it's the iceberg analogy. You've got the little bit above the water and all the stuff underneath. As an adult with advanced thinking skills, you've got this formal operational thinking that says, I know that there's stuff underneath the water and I'm going to look at what's fair based on that. So if we go back to your little story, what's going on here with this teacher doing this is the kids have got this really black and white thinking, and what the teacher is doing is she's essentially magnifying and amplifying it to the point of stupidity. And the kids, even with their concrete operational thinking, they can see it. They can see, hang on, logically, this does not make sense. And the beauty of it is it's starting to move into abstraction. It's starting to move into more advanced kinds of thinking that are typically beyond the level of a 5 or a 6 or a 7 or an 8-year-old. So it does actually work here. What kids generally miss because of the concrete operational thinking that they're in is they see things as fair or unfair, and there is nothing fuzzy about it. They don't have the same moral compass, the equivalent that we have in terms, they're just surface level, right and wrong, good and bad, fair and unfair. That's their perception.
A little while ago, you shared a dilemma with me, a moral dilemma.
Yeah,
it's actually known as the Heinz dilemma.
Right. This is from moral philosopher or psychologist Lawrence Kohlberg. Classic stuff.
This is the stuff we talk about in our spare time, people.
Can I share it with you?
No, I'm going to share it.
Okay, let's go.
A woman was on her deathbed. There was one drug that the doctor said would save her. It was a form of radium that a druggist in the same town had recently discovered. The drug was expensive to make, but the druggist was charging 10 times what the drug cost him to produce.
Sounds like all the pharmaceutical companies I've heard of.
He paid $200 for the radium, but charged $2,000 for a small dose of the drug. The sick woman's husband, Heinz, went to everyone he knew to borrow the money, but he could only get together about $1,000, which was half of what it cost. He told the druggist that his wife was dying and asked him to sell it cheaper or let him pay later. But the druggist said, no, I discovered the drug and I'm going to make money from it. So Heinz got desperate and he broke into the man's laboratory one night to steal the drug for his wife. So the question is, should Heinz have broken into the laboratory to steal the drug for his wife? Why or why not?
Okay, so the Heinz dilemma is basically if you give this question to a 6 to an 8-year-old or even a 10 to 12-year-old, they're just starting to form their moral compass. This is really a question about fairness and equity. This is such a great dilemma. And hopefully even as you're hearing this on the podcast, you're kind of going, wow, that's really tricky. There's a lot of complexity here.
Yeah, my mind is going in 3 different directions all at once.
Yeah.
And trying to justify each one of them.
And so the answer that we come up with is going to be influenced by the values and the principles that we're exposed to at home and at school and in the media. And this obsession with fairness, this is your daughter's way, Lauren, of testing out her moral muscles and figuring out what's right and wrong in her eyes. So when she blows up about fairness, the best thing we can do is engage her in discussions about fairness and justice and empathy. Probably not on the spot, high emotions equals low intelligence, but out of the moment, challenge her to think critically and to consider different perspectives. Because development of moral reasoning is a marathon. It's a marathon. So we have to start taking steps straight away.
But that's not the only thing that's going on here, is it?
No, I think we talk a lot about theory of mind. That's the other developmental playbook principle that I would lean on here. Mental gymnastics. So I've been doing some research on gymnastics lately. I was writing a piece and I got excited about it. I thought, I wonder what the hardest gymnastics move is in the world. And I found this YouTube of the top 10 most difficult gymnastics moves. There's one that's called the Yurchenko double pike. It was named after someone called Yurchenko.
I was about to say, how do you come up with a name like that?
Yeah, Yurchenko double pike. Now, I watched this. Simone Biles. Simone Biles is literally the only female gymnast in the history of the planet to pull off the Yurchenko double pike. It's usually a male gymnast move, and even then, most of them won't try it. Now, the reason that I'm talking about the Yurchenko double pike is because the mental gymnastics, see what I've done there, the linkage, the mental gymnastics that are required to understand that other people have their own thoughts and feelings and perspectives separate from our own.
And they could be so different. Like so different.
For an 8-year-old, it's the equivalent of the mental or psychological equivalent of a Yurchenko double pike. Not very many 8-year-olds on the planet can really get their head around the reality that what's going on in their head is not the same as what's going on in the minds of other people. Certainly no 5 and 6-year-olds can. They start to develop it around that age. So when she's obsessing over fairness, it's not just about her being self-centered and me. It's a crucial step in her cognitive development. This is why little kids struggle to share, because they think what's fair is that I get what I want. That's their idea of fairness. And this moral development, go back to Kohlberg and the Heinz dilemma, and this theory of mind, as they start to kind of coagulate and build up in the brain, we've got that foundation, and now we're really putting the framework up for advanced reasoning and morality and thinking and cognition in adulthood. She's going through that building phase right now. It's a mess, and this is why we need to cut her some slack and use these moments to burgeon, or to nurture her burgeoning theory of mind and moral reasoning and development.
So this conversation is just so important. This changes for us as parents our perspective on where our children are at. Yeah. It allows us to exercise those compassionate muscles that sometimes get lost in everyday life because all we see is a kid who just wants it their way. This is just beautiful. I love how this offers me as a parent so much scope to actually understand where my child's at and why they are the way they are right now.
So I'm going to share 3 quick ideas in like 60 seconds to sort of wrap this up about what we can do about this, okay? Because knowing the developmental reality doesn't stop the fact that it's just a real pain in the bum. When the kid's like, it's not fair. Why don't I ever get, like, it's hard. Even if you know that they don't have the developmental capacity, it's still really hard. So 3 quick ideas. Number 1, I think what we've got to do is genuinely embrace it as a learning opportunity. So fundamentally, fairness is like it's a foundational concept that kids start grappling with really early on. And her fixation on fairness isn't just about getting her way. It's about understanding her place in the world. So we've got to use these as an opportunity to explore and explain and empower with her. Go through those 3 E's. Embrace it as a learning opportunity. Just don't do it when emotions are high.
I think you can have lots of fun with this. When you and I first met, you would take me through a whole heap of hypothetical questions. And we would have so much fun exploring what we might do when we were parents and we had a child who did X or Y, or what we would do if we found ourselves in a shopping centre and somebody was stealing something. Or you just talk to me about all kinds of different moral dilemmas that we might be faced with as adults. We can do this with our kids and have so much fun with it. Make it fun so it doesn't feel like it's a lecture, but start to help them see different perspectives. And I was just thinking about, as you were talking, I go to the doctors and sometimes I sit there and I get a little bit frustrated because I could be waiting for my 15-minute consult for an hour. The doctor has seen a whole heap of people and I'm watching the clock and I know that the person before me has not been in there for 15 minutes like I'm going to be given. He's been in there for 40 minutes. But if I was to think about that from a fairness point of view, I'd get really, really upset. But I know that there are times where I have gone to the doctor and I've been the person who's needed that 40 minutes.
Yeah, so you might have someone in here who's just found out they've got a cancer diagnosis.
But I've gone in with a paper cut.
Right, well, hopefully
very,
not. Yeah.
But very different needs.
Yeah.
And so having those kinds of conversations with your children outside of the moment that are completely outside of the box for them is a really powerful way for them to start to develop a sense of fairness, a sense of where their moral compass is, and also empathy.
Let me share those 2 additional things to make up the 3 things that I said I was going to share really quickly. The first of those extra 2 is we've got to have really clear expectations with our kids around what fairness is and what it isn't and what we're going to do about fairness. I actually say to our kids pretty consistently, it's not fair. I'm not trying to be fair. I'm dealing with what needs to be dealt with right here, right now in the moment. And over time, everything's going to work out okay. And even if it doesn't, that's okay as well. Like, life isn't fair. I think that if you bend over backwards trying to make everything fair in your 8-year-old's eyes, you're setting yourself up for a world of pain. It's not realistic because it's really all about her. I think, though, that you can do it with a whole lot of empathy. So those statements where you give them in fantasy what they can't have in reality, don't you just wish Wouldn't it be great? That's where I'd be heading there. And the last thing is, kids are sponges. Lead by example. They absorb absolutely everything from their parents. So the way that you respond to things that aren't fair in the world, whether you respond with grace, whether you respond with compromise, and sometimes when you just roll with the punches and accept, life isn't fair. Like sometimes we all just have to grieve what we can't have and then move on, and helping the kids to see that life isn't fair for us sometimes as grown-ups as well. And that's just what it is. What we're really doing there is we're letting the kids know that life can be difficult for everybody, and resilient people recognize the unfairness of it all and make their own luck. They make their own goodness. They go out and make a positive contribution. So that, I reckon, Lauren, is how we deal with the unfairness problem with our kids.
Well, if I was going to wrap everything up into a nice little perfect package
like
with a beautiful bow.
Going to, yes.
I think the thing that stands out to me the most is helping our children learn to trust that there's enough. It's that abundance mentality that says, regardless of what it feels like right now, trusting that mummy has enough love to give to you when you need it and to your sister when she needs it, that there's enough food, that even though it looks like somebody else is getting more than you, that you will have enough for your needs. It's trusting that there's enough toys, that there's enough attention, that there's enough care, that there are enough friends and people in the world who love and adore you. It's just helping them to trust that there's enough. That abundance mentality makes all the difference.
I think you talked more than me today on the podcast. I don't know if that's fair.
Really?
The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rollon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. No, I don't actually have a clue, but I thought it was going to be really funny to say it. If you'd like more information about making your family happy, we'd love for you to visit us, happyfamilies.com.au. Check out our socials. We're on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, tomorrow on the podcast, we're talking with Professor Brad Wilcox. He's a sociologist from the University of Virginia about his brand new book called Get Married. Controversial and provocative and very interesting.